Welcome to this channel. At the sum of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories for you. Subscribe. The year was 2178, and humanity had ventured far beyond its home in the Milky Way. Space was no longer an abstract frontier, but a canvas painted with the footprints of mankind's exploration. The Astrius, an advanced vessel built for interstellar diplomacy and exploration, was at the helm of humanity's quest to find intelligent life beyond the stars. Under the command of Captain Elena Morozova, the Astrius had charted distant worlds and encountered strange phenomena across multiple star systems. But despite humanity's reach into the cosmos, encounters with alien civilizations were still rare. That changed when a mysterious signal reached the ship, originating from an uncharted planet in the distant Sablin cluster. The signal was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't just a random burst of radio waves or cosmic noise. It was structured, deliberate, and rhythmic, echoing across the void like a cosmic heartbeat. The planet, Zixer, was located in a system that appeared desolate on their star charts. But beneath its arid surface, something lived. After analyzing the signal and verifying the data, Captain Morozova made the call. "Prepare an away team," she ordered, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. "We're going to meet them." The shuttle broke through Zixer's thin atmosphere, descending toward the coordinates provided by the signal. As they neared the surface, the humans were greeted by an awe-inspiring landscape. Silver forests stretched out across the horizon, their metallic leaves shimmering in the pale light of Zixer's two suns. The trees stood tall and still, but their leaves clinked like wind chimes when stirred by the occasional breeze. The ground was covered in a thin layer of dust that sparkled like crushed glass under their boots. Captain Morozova led the way, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of life. Beside her was Dr. Sarai Ahmed, the ship's anthropologist, eager to document what could be humanity's first peaceful contact with an alien race in decades. Lieutenant James Carter, their security officer, followed close behind, his hand hovering near his sidearm, just in case. It wasn't long before they saw them, the Zixians. Emerging from the tree line, a group of tall, slender figures approached. They were humanoid but clearly not human. Their skin was a pale lavender, and their long, flowing garments shifted colors in harmony with the light. The fabric was thin, almost translucent, moving with a life of its own, as if it had never touched the ground. The Zixians moved in unison, their steps silent and graceful, as though they were walking on air. Their eyes, large and dark, shimmered with intelligence and something the humans couldn't yet understand. As the distance between the two groups closed, the air thickened with anticipation. First contact, something so fragile, so full of promise and peril was about to unfold. The humans halted, unsure of how to begin this delicate interaction. The Zixians stopped a few meters away, standing in perfect formation, their long garments billowing in the light breeze. For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the soft clinking of the metallic leaves above them. Then, without warning, the Zixians performed a gesture that none of the humans could have expected. With deliberate, synchronized movements, they lifted their shimmering skirts high into the air, revealing their spindly legs and the intricate patterns etched into their lavender skin. The gesture was slow and ceremonial, as if rehearsed for centuries. Each movement was performed with a strange elegance, and there was a weighty significance behind it, though its meaning was lost on the humans. Lieutenant Carter's hand tightened around his weapon, his instincts screaming that this might be some kind of hostile move. But Captain Morozova quickly raised a hand to stop him. "Hold your position," she whispered, her eyes never leaving the aliens. Dr. Ahmed, too, was frozen in place, her mind racing through the possibilities. Was this an act of submission? A display of strength? Some kind of greeting? Her mind flooded with historical references to Earth's own cultures, but nothing quite fit. Captain Morozova, always calm under pressure, decided to take the first step. She walked forward, slowly, raising her hand in a gesture of peace. "Greetings from Earth," she said, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. We come in peace. For a moment, there was no response, only the sound of the wind rustling through the alien trees. Then, the tallest of the Zixians, presumably their leader, lowered his skirts with a soft hiss, a sound that seemed to ripple through the rest of his people. His face, though humanoid, was expressionless, but there was no sign of hostility. Instead, he spoke through a small device on his wrist, the universal translator converting his melodic voice into something the humans could understand. "We welcome the Earth people," the Zixian leader said. "We show you respect, as is our custom. The lifting of our garments is a sign of peace, vulnerability, and openness. We hope you will honor it." There was a collective sigh of relief from the human crew. The tension in the air eased, though a sense of bewilderment remained. Dr. Ahmed was the first to speak, her voice filled with both wonder and a need for clarification. "It's a gesture of peace?" The Zixian leader inclined his head slightly, his dark eyes studying her. "Yes. We reveal ourselves as we are, without defense or deceit. It is how we greet those we trust." Captain Morozova, ever the diplomat, nodded thoughtfully. "We are honored by your greeting. It is an unfamiliar custom to us, but we appreciate the significance." The Zixian's leader stepped forward, his movements fluid and graceful. "You have come a long way, Earth people. Our ways may seem strange, but we hope you will come to understand them, just as we hope to understand you." The initial uncertainty began to fade as the two groups stood together on the shimmering plains of Zixer. First contact, though marked by an unexpected and strange custom, had been made. Captain Morozova exchanged a glance with Dr. Ahmed, who was already scribbling notes on her datapad. They had encountered something truly alien, yet familiar in its intention and olive branch across the stars. "We have much to learn," Captain Morozova said softly, her eyes taking in the alien landscape. "And we've only just begun." And so, the humans and the Zixians stood side by side, each learning that in the vastness of the universe, even the strangest customs could become the foundation of something far more profound. Back on the Astrius, the crew gathered in the central briefing room, a space lined with digital screens and the soft hum of high-tech consoles. The air buzzed with confusion and curiosity after their first contact with the Zixians. Though the encounter had been peaceful, the ritualistic skirt lifting had left the crew perplexed. Was it a symbolic gesture of peace? An invitation for further communication? Or something even deeper? Captain Elena Morozova, seated at the head of the table, allowed a moment for her crew to settle before she began the debriefing. Around her, the team exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Sarai Ahmed, the ship's anthropologist, was tapping furiously on her datapad, clearly absorbed in her thoughts. Lieutenant James Carter, the security officer, still looked tense, his arms crossed and his brow furrowed. The rest of the crew, a mix of engineers, scientists, and diplomats, awaited the captain's analysis. "We've just experienced one of the most bizarre first contacts in human history," Captain Morozova said, breaking the silence. "I won't pretend I wasn't caught off guard. But whatever the Zixians' custom means, they've shown us no hostility. It's clear we need to understand their culture before we jump to conclusions." Dr. Ahmed looked up, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Captain, I've been reviewing the footage from the encounter and comparing it with cultural anthropology databases from Earth. There's a precedent for symbolic displays of vulnerability in many of our own cultures, though nothing quite like what we've seen." Lieutenant Carter leaned forward, his skepticism evident. "You're saying there are Earth customs where people lift their clothes to greet someone?" Dr. Ahmed smiled. "Not exactly. But if we take a step back and think about it abstractly, this is about vulnerability and trust. Some cultures on Earth, particularly ancient ones, use gestures like bowing, kneeling, or even exposing parts of the body to show they were unarmed or harmless. In medieval Japan, samurai would sometimes bow so deeply that they left themselves exposed to attack, as a gesture of extreme trust. Even in modern-day politics, a handshake between two leaders can symbolize peaceful intentions. The Zixians have taken this idea of openness and vulnerability to an extreme. Captain Morozova nodded thoughtfully. It makes sense. But the fact that they use something so intimate, lifting their skirts, to demonstrate it means it's deeply ingrained in their society. There's probably a lot more going on here than we can see at first glance. Dr. Ahmed tapped her datapad again and projected a hologram in the center of the table. The image showed a close-up of the intricate patterns etched into the Zixians' legs when they had lifted their garments. I noticed something during the encounter, she said, pointing to the patterns. These designs aren't random. They appear to be symbolic or possibly even biographical. What do you mean? Asked Lieutenant Carter, still skeptical but intrigued. These markings could represent important moments in their lives, maybe their lineage, achievements, or even personal history. It's possible that by revealing these symbols, they are showing us their identity, their story, in a way that's far more personal than a simple handshake. It's like opening a book and inviting us to read the first chapter. The room fell quiet as the crew absorbed this possibility. The idea that the Zixians were offering such an intimate look into their lives as part of a simple greeting was both fascinating and overwhelming. If Dr. Ahmed was right, then the Zixians were far more open and trusting than anyone had expected. Lieutenant Carter broke the silence. So, what's the proper response? If this is how they show trust, what do we do in return? Captain Morozova leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled thoughtfully. That's the question, isn't it? If their custom is about showing vulnerability, how do we reciprocate without disrespecting their culture? Lifting our own clothes probably isn't the best option. A chuckle rippled through the room, breaking the tension. We need to ask them, Dr. Ahmed said seriously. If we're going to build any kind of relationship with the Zixians, we have to show that we're willing to understand their customs on their terms. I suggest we request another meeting and ask them to explain the meaning behind their greeting. That way, we avoid misunderstandings and show respect. Captain Morozova agreed. Let's arrange for a diplomatic meeting with their leader. We'll tell them we want to learn more about their traditions and how we can honor them in return. The decision made, the crew got to work. Over the next few hours, preparations were made for a second encounter with the Zixians, this time with the express purpose of understanding their culture on a deeper level. The next day, the Astrius shuttle returned to the surface of Zixer, this time descending toward the Zixian capital. The city, if it could be called that, was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Instead of towering buildings, the Zixians lived in structures that seemed to grow out of the landscape, their architecture woven seamlessly into the silver forests. The structures were made from the same glass-like material as the trees, shimmering in the sunlight like fragile sculptures. Paths of iridescent stones wound through the city, and everything was bathed in the soft glow of Zixer's twin suns. The human delegation, led by Captain Morozova and Dr. Ahmed, was met by Solhar, the Zixian leader they had first encountered. He stood tall and serene, his lavender skin shimmering faintly in the light. Around him, other Zixians gathered, their garments once again shifting in color with the breeze. This time, the humans were more prepared for the greeting. As Solhar and his council lifted their skirts, Captain Morozova and her team respectfully inclined their heads, careful to show no surprise or discomfort. "We come again in peace," Captain Morozova said as the garments were lowered. "And we wish to understand your customs so that we may show you the same respect you've shown us." Solhar's eyes gleamed with something akin to approval. "You are wise to seek understanding," he said, his voice resonating through the translator. "The lifting of our garments is indeed a sign of peace, but also one of openness and trust. We show you that we carry no weapons, that we are vulnerable in your presence. This is the foundation of our diplomacy. There is no peace without trust." Dr. Ahmed stepped forward, her curiosity evident. "The markings beneath your garments," she said. "Do they represent your personal history?" Solhar nodded, his long fingers tracing the patterns on his own legs. "They are the stories of our lives. Each Zixian is marked at birth, and as we grow, we earn new symbols that represent our achievements, our sorrows, our victories, and our defeats. To reveal them to you is to show you our essence, our spirit. It is an invitation to understand who we are. The human crew was silent, absorbing the depth of the gesture. What had initially seemed strange was now revealed to be an act of profound openness, an offer of connection between two vastly different species. Captain Morozova spoke carefully, wanting to honor the moment. We are honored that you have shared this with us. We wish to learn how we can reciprocate, how we can show you the same openness and trust. Solhar tilted his head, considering. For now, your words of peace are enough. But in time, as our understanding grows, we will teach you our ways. There will come a time when you may choose to honor us in return. Until then, we ask only that you continue to walk this path with us. The meeting continued with discussions about culture, philosophy, and the possibility of future alliances. The humans, still grappling with the strangeness of the Xixian customs, began to see the profound depth in their rituals. The lifting of their garments wasn't just a strange quirk, it was a gesture that spoke of vulnerability, openness, and trust, concepts that the humans could deeply relate to despite their differences. As the delegation returned to the Astrius, there was a new sense of purpose among the crew. They had come to Zixer expecting the unknown, but they hadn't anticipated that a simple gesture could carry such meaning. They now understood that their mission was not just to explore, but to truly connect with the alien species they encountered. Dr. Ahmed, gazing out at the shimmering planet below, voiced what they were all feeling. We've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn from them. And Captain Morozova, looking out at the vast expanse of space beyond, nodded in agreement. We're just beginning. Weeks passed aboard the Astrius as the crew's relationship with the Xixians deepened. What had begun as a simple diplomatic mission was now evolving into something much more significant. With each meeting, the humans learned more about Xixian culture, their rituals, and their unique worldview. The initial shock of the skirt-lifting custom had faded, replaced by a profound respect for the Xixians' approach to peace and openness. It was a culture steeped in ritual and symbolism, where every action carried meaning. Captain Elena Morozova, along with Dr. Sarai Ahmed, had made it a priority to spend as much time as possible with Solhar, the leader of the Xixian Council, and his advisors. They had become regular visitors to Zixer, often walking through the silver forests and translucent cities, discussing everything from philosophy to art, to the stars that glittered above both their worlds. One day, as the twin suns of Zixer began to dip below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of violet and gold, Captain Morozova and Dr. Ahmed found themselves invited to a festival in the Xixian capital. Solhar explained that the festival was in honor of the star gods, a celebration that marked the passing of seasons and the alignment of the planet's moons. The event was sacred, and only a select few were invited to participate in the rituals. This is a great honor, Solhar told them as they stood on the edge of the great celebration square, which had been transformed into a shimmering expanse of light and sound. You have shown us great respect, and now we wish to invite you into one of our most sacred traditions. The square was filled with hundreds of Xixians, all dressed in garments even more elaborate than usual. The shifting colors of their clothes were synchronized with the ambient light, creating a mesmerizing display that made it hard to distinguish where the garments ended and the surroundings began. Music soft and otherworldly filled the air, played on instruments unfamiliar to the humans, but it had an ethereal quality that resonated deeply within them. Captain Morozova and Dr. Ahmed exchanged glances. While they had been learning about Xixian customs for weeks, participating in a sacred ritual was a significant step. Both women felt the weight of this invitation. It wasn't just a gesture of diplomacy, it was a bridge between their two cultures, an invitation to truly connect on a deeper level. Solhar led them to the center of the square, where a circular platform rose from the ground, its surface glowing faintly. Other Xixians gathered around, their eyes watching the humans with curiosity and quiet reverence. Despite the unfamiliarity of the scene, there was no sense of discomfort, only a feeling of inclusion and acceptance. Tonight, Solhar said, we honor the star gods who guide us through the cycles of time. It is a time of reflection and renewal. As part of our tradition, those who have earned the trust of the Xixian people may be invited to participate in the rite of openness. Morozova raised an eyebrow. The rite of openness? Dr. Ahmed leaned forward, intrigued. Is this related to the skirt-lifting custom? Solhar nodded. Yes, but it is much more. The lifting of our garments is a simple gesture of trust and peace. The rite of openness is something deeper. It is a moment when we reveal not just our bodies but our hearts and minds. We share the essence of who we are, and in doing so, we strengthen the bond between us. Dr. Ahmed's eyes lit up with understanding. It's a ritual of unity. Precisely, Solhar replied. And tonight, we invite you to partake in this ritual with us. It is a rare honor, one we do not extend lightly. But you have proven yourselves worthy. Captain Morozova felt a rush of emotion. She understood the gravity of what Solhar was offering. Participating in the rite of openness wasn't just a diplomatic gesture, it was a profound act of trust. She had seen the Xixians' vulnerability through their customs, but now they were asking the humans to show the same. With a nod, she said, we're honored to be part of this. The ceremony began with the Xixians gathering around the glowing platform. The music shifted into a slow, melodic rhythm, and the Xixians began lifting their skirts in unison, as they had done during the initial greeting, but this time it felt different. The air was charged with a deeper meaning, as if they were revealing not just their bodies, but their souls. Solhar stepped forward, standing in front of Captain Morozova and Dr. Ahmed. Before we proceed, we must ask if you are willing to share in this moment. The rite of openness requires that you, too, reveal something of yourselves. Dr. Ahmed looked to Morozova, who gave her a small nod. We are, the captain said firmly. Solhar bowed his head slightly, then motioned for the humans to follow him onto the platform. You do not need to lift your garments as we do, he said with a hint of humor. But you must show us something of yourselves, something that reflects who you are. Dr. Ahmed, ever the scholar, was the first to respond. She stepped forward and spoke clearly. I am Sarai Ahmed, from Earth. I am an anthropologist, a seeker of knowledge and understanding. I have dedicated my life to studying the cultures of my own world, and now I wish to learn from yours. In this, I open my mind and heart to the Xixian people. Solhar bowed his head in acknowledgement, impressed by her sincerity. Captain Morozova followed. I am Elena Morozova, captain of the Astrius. My duty is to explore the stars and protect my crew. But beyond that, I am someone who believes in the potential for peace between all peoples, no matter how different we are. I open myself to you in the hope that we can continue to build a future together. The Xixians around the platform lifted their hands in a gesture of approval, a sign that the humans had met the expectations of the rite. The moment was quiet, reverent. The humans had passed the test of openness, and in doing so, they had been accepted fully into Xixian society. But the ritual wasn't over. Solhar stepped forward and lifted his hands toward the sky. The light from the platform intensified, and the surrounding Xixians began to hum in unison, their voices blending into the music. The air seemed to vibrate with energy. Slowly, the markings on Solhar's skin began to glow, the intricate patterns lighting up as if they were alive. The other Xixians followed, their markings illuminating the entire square. We reveal our stories, Solhar said softly, so that you may see us as we truly are. The patterns on our skin are not merely decoration, they are our lives. Each line, each curve, represents a moment in time, a choice, a loss, a triumph. By sharing this with you, we offer you our deepest trust. Dr. Ahmed watched in awe as the glowing patterns shifted, almost as if they were moving in rhythm with the Xixians' memories. It was as if their very essence was being laid bare, not just as individuals, but as a collective. Each pattern told a story, a history woven into their very being. And in that moment, Captain Morozova understood the full weight of what they had been invited into. The Zixians were not just offering peace, they were offering connection on a level she hadn't thought possible. This was more than diplomacy or friendship. It was unity. As the ceremony came to a close, Solhar approached the humans once more. His markings dimmed, but the light of his gaze was unwavering. "You have taken part in our most sacred ritual," he said. "From this day forward, you are not just visitors to Zixer. You are our friends, our allies." Morozova felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also something more. A bond had been forged that went beyond words, beyond rituals. It was a connection that transcended species and culture, something built on mutual respect and trust. "We are honored," she said quietly. "And we will honor this bond." As the night sky darkened and the stars began to shimmer above, the humans and Zixians stood together, united by something far greater than themselves. The bond they had formed, forged through openness and trust, would endure. And as Captain Morozova looked up at the stars, she knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where humanity and the Zixians would face the unknown together. Time passed, and the bond between the humans and the Zixians deepened. The crew of the Astrius had become regular visitors to Zixer, no longer seen as mere outsiders but as trusted allies, woven into the fabric of Zixian life. Captain Elena Morozova, now a revered figure among the Zixians, had formed a strong friendship with Solhar, the wise and enigmatic leader of their people. Dr. Sarai Ahmed, too, had immersed herself in their customs and rituals, documenting the intricacies of Zixian culture, while learning lessons she knew would change humanity's understanding of what it meant to connect with another species. But peace, as they both knew, was fragile. One evening, as Captain Morozova stood on the deck of her ship, gazing out at the stars, an urgent signal came through. The serene atmosphere of Zixer had been shattered. The Valkshans, a hostile alien species known for their ruthless conquest of weaker civilizations, had entered the Zixer system. They were a warlike race, bent on domination, and they had set their sights on Zixer's rich resources. The Zixians, who had long chosen a path of peace, were ill-equipped to defend themselves. Inside the ship's war room, the holographic projection of the Valsian fleet loomed large, an imposing array of battleships that dwarfed the Zixians' peaceful world. Captain Morozova, her usual calm under pressure now strained, called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. "The Valkshans are known for their aggression," she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "They won't be interested in negotiations. Zixer is defenseless. If we don't intervene, they'll be wiped out." Dr. Ahmed frowned, her mind racing. "Zixer's society is built on peace. They've evolved without the need for defense mechanisms like we have. They won't be able to fight back." Lieutenant James Carter, the ship's security officer, leaned forward, his tone grave. "We're the only line of defense they have. The Valkshans won't hesitate to destroy the entire planet if they don't get what they want. Our advanced weaponry might give us the edge, but we're outnumbered." Captain Morozova took a deep breath, considering the gravity of their situation. The Astrius wasn't a warship, but it was outfitted with advanced technology that could make a difference. Still, taking on the Valkshans would be a significant risk. The safety of her crew weighed heavily on her mind, but so did the fate of the Zixians, who had welcomed them with such openness. "We don't have a choice," Morozova said, her eyes hardening with resolve. "We stand with the Zixians. We owe them that much." The humans quickly mobilized. On the surface of Zixer, Captain Morozova and her crew met with Solhar and the Zixian Council in the central hall, the crystalline walls reflecting the tension that had now settled over the planet. Solhar stood tall, but there was a clear sadness in his eyes as he spoke. "We knew this day might come," he said softly. "But we chose a path of peace long ago. We cannot fight them. We have no weapons. Violence is not in our nature." Captain Morozova placed a hand on Solhar's shoulder, her expression gentle but firm. "We will defend you. The Zixians have shown us nothing but trust and openness. You don't need to change who you are. Let us be your shield. Solver's gaze met hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of doubt in his usually composed demeanor. We do not wish to bring war to our people, Captain Morozova. But we also understand that there are times when peace must be protected. If this is what must be done, then we will place our trust in you. The decision was made. Humanity would stand between the Zixians and the Valksians. As the Valsian fleet approached the outer edges of the Zixer system, the Astrius positioned itself strategically between the invaders and the planet, ready to engage. The sleek, dark Valsian ships cut through space like predators closing in on their prey, their weapon systems humming with deadly power. The tension on the bridge of the Astrius was palpable. Lieutenant Carter monitored the tactical displays, his fingers poised over the ship's defensive systems. Their fleet is massive, Captain. They're trying to surround us. Morozova stood at the center of the bridge, her face illuminated by the glowing displays around her. They're not expecting resistance, she said, her voice steady. Let's give them something to think about. Lieutenant, target their lead ship. We'll force them to change their strategy. The Astrius unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, streaks of blue light cutting across the void and slamming into the Valsian flagship. The ship rocked under the impact, but it remained intact. In response, the Valksians opened fire, their weapons lighting up the dark space between the two forces. The Astrius shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the attack, but the strain was visible. We can't hold them off forever, Carter warned. There are too many of them. Morozova narrowed her eyes, her mind racing. They needed an advantage, something the Valksians wouldn't expect. Then, an idea struck her. She turned to Dr. Ahmed, who had been monitoring the communication channels. Sarai, the Zixians have no military, but they have advanced technology in other areas, right? Something we can use? Dr. Ahmed's eyes lit up as the realization hit her. The Zixian cities, those crystalline structures, they're not just for aesthetics. They're made from a material that can refract and amplify energy. If we can channel our weapons through their city's grid, we might be able to create a powerful enough defense to repel the Valksians. Morozova's mind raced. It was a bold plan, but it just might work. Get in touch with Solhar. Tell him we need access to their energy grid. If we can integrate it with our ship's weapons, we might be able to turn the tide. On the surface of Zixer, Solhar and his people worked quickly, rerouting the energy from their city's crystalline structures to the Astrius in orbit. The normally peaceful Zixians, despite their pacifist nature, moved with a calm determination. They understood that this was their chance to protect their world without betraying their core values. As the energy from the planet began to flow into the ship's systems, the Astrius weaponry surged with newfound power. The ship's plasma cannons, now amplified by the Zixian technology, glowed with an intense, pulsing light. Morozova watched the displays, hope flickering in her chest. Fire, she ordered. The next volley of plasma blasts erupted from the Astrius, but this time, the effect was catastrophic. The amplified energy beams sliced through the Valsian fleet, tearing apart their ships in brilliant explosions of light. The Valksians, caught off guard by the sudden shift in power, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. Ship after ship was decimated by the onslaught. On the surface, the Zixians watched in awe as the sky above them lit up with the brilliant glow of the battle. For the first time, they witnessed the power of their own technology used in defense. It wasn't through violence or destruction, but through their own ingenuity and the strength of their new allies. As the Valsian fleet retreated, their remaining ships limping back into the darkness of space, a collective sigh of relief swept through both the human and Zixian ranks. The immediate threat had passed, and Zixer was safe for now. Later, in the quiet aftermath of the battle, Captain Morozova and Solhar stood together on a high balcony overlooking the shimmering city below. The air was still, and the stars above them seemed closer than ever. You saved us, Solhar said, his voice filled with gratitude. But more than that, you showed us that peace can be defended without sacrificing who we are. Morozova shook her head. You saved yourselves, Solhar. Your people's technology or wisdom is what allowed us to win. We couldn't have done it without you. Solhar lifted his head to the stars, his lavender skin glowing faintly in the light. Perhaps. But I have learned something from you as well, Captain. There is strength in openness, but there is also strength in standing together. We will always seek peace, but now we understand that peace must sometimes be protected. The captain smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. And we'll stand with you, as allies, as friends. From that day forward, the bond between humanity and the Xixians became unbreakable. The two species, so different in their origins and philosophies, had found common ground in their shared desire for peace and mutual respect. They had faced a great threat together, and in doing so, had forged an alliance that would stand the test of time. As the stars shone down on Zixer, Captain Morozova knew that the future held even more challenges, but also more hope. Together, humanity and the Xixians would face whatever lay ahead, united by trust, openness, and the belief that even in the vastness of the cosmos, true connection could be found.